They really thought they had you figured out. They watched from a distance, whispered behind closed doors, and made quiet assumptions like they knew your whole story. In their minds, you were just another person passing through life, another name that wouldn't matter long term. But what they missed, what they never caught, was what heaven had already stamped on you. You weren't ordinary. You were walking through storms with light stitched into your spirit. And even when darkness tried to shake your hand, you never let go of who you were. The moment this person finally saw it, really saw it, it rocked them, not gently, not slowly. It hit them like a bolt out of nowhere. They realized you weren't surviving by chance. You were covered, protected, marked. Everything they once underestimated suddenly made sense. And that realization humbled them fast. Your strength wasn't loud, but it was unbreakable. Your grace wasn't flashy, but it was undeniable. And it left them standing there like, wait, how did I miss this? They honestly thought you'd fold, thought heartbreak would finish you, thought betrayal would knock the wind out of you for good. They placed their bets in silence, assuming you'd be the one who couldn't handle the pressure. But when God is writing your story, people's predictions don't stand a chance. They watched you walk out of fires that would have burned anyone else to the ground. And you didn't even smell like smoke. That's when it clicked. You were never walking alone. When you were exhausted, something unseen was holding you up. When you felt empty, heaven was still pouring into you. Angels were doing overtime behind the scenes, lifting you when you didn't even have the energy to lift your head. And once that person realized you were being guided the whole time, it humbled them in a way words can't explain. They replayed moments they once dismissed. Your silence, your patience, your softness. They confused calm with weakness and kindness with Navit. They didn't understand how you stayed so steady while everything around you was chaotic. What they didn't know was that your stillness came from faith, not fear. Every quiet moment was God whispering, hold tight, I've got this. And when they finally understood that you weren't frozen, you were trusting, it shattered every illusion they had about you. You weren't breaking under pressure. You were being refined by it, polished, strengthened, prepared. Somewhere in the middle of your loneliest nights, while you were crying and thinking nobody noticed, heaven was paying attention. Your name was being written where it mattered. And now the same person who once overlooked your pain is being shown who you really are. Not the version you tried to hold together, but the raw, sacred truth of your soul. They're stunned because what they thought was just someone healing turned out to be a vessel for miracles. God didn't need their approval. He just moved. And now they're realizing something that's shaking them to their core. You weren't meant to fall. You were meant to rise. But here's where it gets even crazier, because what God is about to reveal next doesn't just shock them. It changes how the world starts seeing you. Next part is where everything flips. There was a time they laughed, not out loud, but in that quiet, dismissive way people do when they don't believe in someone's future. When you talked about your dreams, your vision, the life you felt called toward, they brushed it off like wishful thinking. In their head, it sounded unrealistic, too hopeful, too far-fetched. They thought you were reaching for things that weren't meant for you. What they didn't see was the foundation God was laying under every single step you took. While they were doubting, heaven was building. While they were questioning, God was aligning. Brick by brick, moment by moment, your life was being structured in ways they couldn't recognize yet. And now it's starting to show. The things you once spoke with faith are rising in real time, and it's messing with them heavy. The same person who doubted you is now watching you become someone they never imagined possible. What shocks them the most isn't just where you're going. It's how you got there. You didn't force doors open. You didn't play dirty. You didn't beg for validation or prove a single point. You just kept walking, kept trusting, kept believing in something they couldn't see. Back then, they called it delusion. Now, they're calling it divine. That's how heaven works. It flips the whole narrative when nobody is ready for it. They're thinking back to how you stayed kind even when people treated you wrong, how you gave grace when you could have clapped back, how you kept loving even when you were bleeding inside. At the time, they saw that as weakness, thought you were too soft, too emotional, too sensitive for this world. But now they're realizing something major. That softness was strength in disguise. You were healing others while quietly holding yourself together. You were pouring out while running on fumes. And they never noticed until God started moving through your life in undeniable ways. That's when it hit them. You weren't just surviving. You were on assignment. Your pain had purpose. Your tears weren't wasted. Every battle was shaping you into someone heaven could trust. When they finally saw God working through your presence, your words, your smile, even your silence, it wrecked every lie they believed about you. You weren't weak. You were chosen to carry a kind of strength not everyone is built to understand. They tried comparing you to other people, measured your progress with worldly timelines. But what they didn't know was your clock wasn't set by earth. Your timing was heaven-made. And now that you're stepping into blessings they can't explain, they're stuck trying to make sense of it all. They keep asking, how did they go from overlooked to unforgettable? The answer, it wasn't luck. It was alignment. Every delay protected you. Every rejection redirected you. Every closed door was God saying, not yet, wait for better. And now the same people who once looked down on you are watching you rise without bitterness, without revenge, without needing to flex. You let grace speak, and grace spoke loud. And just when they thought they'd seen enough, God does something next that forces them to confront your past and the truth they tried to bury. Next part goes even deeper. They knew your past. Every scar, every mistake, every chapter you wish you could have skipped. They knew it, and they used it. They whispered about it when you weren't around. They judged you by who you used to be, not who you were becoming. In their minds, your history was supposed to limit you. They thought your past would cage you, keep you small, keep you stuck. What they didn't realize was God doesn't disqualify people because of their past. He qualifies them through it. That's what shook them. They expected your story to end in regret. Instead, God used every broken piece as the foundation for your calling. The things you thought counted you out became the very reasons heaven counted you in. Every tear, every setback, every moment you barely survived, God turned it into evidence of His power working through you. And when they realized you were being promoted spiritually, not just surviving but elevating, it rattled them. Because God's favor doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It moves whether people are ready or not. And your life became proof of that in real time. They sit back now, watching your life bloom in places they swore were dead ends. Places they called deserts are suddenly overflowing. They keep asking themselves, how did this even happen? But deep down, they already know the answer. It wasn't chance. It wasn't coincidence. It was God's hand, steady, patient, and relentless. That same hand held you when you cried alone, pulled you back when life tried to drown you, guarded you when nobody else noticed. And now the person who once overlooked you can't deny it anymore. You were built different. You weren't meant to walk the same road as everyone else. You were chosen for a path that didn't make sense to the world, but lined up perfectly with heaven. They remember calling you too much, too emotional, too deep, too intense. What they didn't understand was you weren't too much. You were overflowing. You were full of purpose, full of truth, full of God. You couldn't shrink yourself to fit into their limited understanding. And now that fullness is drawing people toward you, the same traits they criticized are now your superpower. Your sensitivity became your strength. Your honesty became your fire. Your emotions became your compass. And now the person who once misunderstood you is struggling to catch up, realizing they misjudged a miracle. They expected you to fade into the background, but God called you to shine. They walked past you without noticing, assuming your silence meant emptiness. But silence doesn't mean nothing. It means depth. And when God finally allowed your light to crack through everything that tried to dim you, it was impossible to ignore. Now they feel it, the weight of your presence, not because you changed who you are, but because you grew into who you were always meant to be. They can't unsee it. They can't unfeel it. Your existence disrupts everything they thought they knew because God hid power in places they never thought to look. They hear people praising your name now, talking about your kindness, your resilience, your faith, and it messes with them because others see what they missed. That's what favor does. It opens eyes and puts your name on tongues without you lifting a finger. But what really breaks them isn't what the world is saying about you. It's what starts happening to them when your name shows up in places they never expected. Next part is where the realization becomes unavoidable. They heard your name somewhere random, a room you'd never even stepped into. Someone was talking about your strength, your kindness, your story, and it stopped them cold. It felt like the universe was saying, "You can't run from this anymore." The one they thought would fade quietly was now being spoken of with respect. And that's when everything hit them at once. Every missed moment, every chance they didn't take, every time they underestimated the soul standing right in front of them. They started remembering the little things, the way you smiled even when you were hurting, how you listened without interrupting, how you stayed when they pushed you away. Back then, they didn't get it. Now they're looking back with spiritual eyes, realizing you weren't just part of their story. You were the lesson. You were sent to shift something inside them, whether they were ready or not. They tried to replace your energy, tried to recreate what your presence gave them, but nothing worked. Conversations felt hollow. Laughter didn't land the same, because when God assigns someone to touch your spirit, nothing else compares. The shock wasn't missing you. It was realizing they never truly saw you when you were right there. They see you now, glowing, thriving, at peace, not flashy, just grounded. And it hits them that your light was never about attention. It came from battles you survived and love you chose anyway. You didn't perform. You didn't pretend. You were real, and heaven moves through the real. They scroll past a photo of you one day, smiling, celebrating something you once cried over, and it knocks the breath out of them. They remember the tears, the lonely exits, the quiet goodbyes, and now you're shining, loved, aligned. That's when they realize the truth. You were never buried. You were planted. Your name keeps showing up in conversations, in rooms, even in songs. Lyrics hit different now. They feel you in the silence, in the colors, in the stillness of moments they can't explain. It's not obsession, it's reverence, because you weren't ordinary. You were sacred, a divine interruption sent to wake their spirit up. They dream about you sometimes, not the old way. These dreams feel holy. You're surrounded by light. You're peaceful. And they wake up emotional because they finally see you through heaven's lens. That realization cracks something open in them. It hurts, but it heals too. They admit it now, even if only to themselves. I didn't know they were that special. That confession cost them pride. but it's necessary because the guilt got too loud to ignore. You healed parts of them they didn't even know were broken, and now that you're distant, they feel the absence of their own softness. You didn't just love, you resurrected. And that's the haunting truth they sit with. You were heaven in human form. Quiet, patient, powerful. You carried something ancient, something holy. And when God finally chose to reveal you, it happened publicly. So even the ones who ran from the truth had to watch. You didn't just survive pain. You alchemized it, turned it into wisdom, turned it into grace, turned it into gold. And now your story is inspiring people you've never met. Your name is being whispered in places your feet haven't even touched yet. That's divine favor. It doesn't ask permission. It moves mountains and makes announcements. You were the one they didn't see coming. Heaven's secret, revealed at the perfect time. Lord, we thank you for guidance, protection, and divine timing. Give strength to those walking in faith, patience to those waiting, and clarity to hearts awakening to truth. May love unfold gently and powerfully, aligned with your perfect will. Amen. If this message hit your spirit, stay connected. There's another word waiting for you next. Your story isn't over. It's just getting louder.